Hi guys, welcome to another video on the Porsche 356. We've been focusing on this near side. We've got the sill, wing and inner sill all repaired, so check out the video. Right, picking up where we left off with the last video, I'm finishing off the jacking point. Next up, the rear quarter panel. As you can see again, the seam is absolutely full of weird rust and crust, so I'm going to take it off and clean it all up. With the outer skin removed, you can really see just how much crust is stuck in this seam. I think if we had left this, it would have caused real issues with paintwork down the line. To remove it, I just use a flat blade screwdriver to scrape off the biggest clumps, and then use a belt sander to clean it up to shiny metal. A small section of the B pillar needed repairing at the bottom, and then I replaced the flange on the outer quarter panel before welding the entire piece back in. Okay, so I've repaired the flange on this part of the quarter panel. For some reason still this side doesn't have this step in here, so I'm now going to put that in before I can now offer up the quarter panel. In this instance, I've ground down my tack welds and then used a hammer and dolly to planish the panels completely smooth before fully welding them in. On areas where I have access, I like to grind down the weld on the inside too. I don't grind it as smooth as the outside because I don't want to take away too much material, but it's nice to get the weld tidy. Okay, so that's all repaired up now, nice and flush. Next up, I'm going to weld this sill in. I've just checked it with the core. Nice fitment, so we're ready to weld it in. Here I'm welding the sill upwards onto the panel above it. As you can see, there's a small gap between the sill and the longitudinal, so I've just made a small little piece to fill in the gap. Next up is the inner wheel tub. It's pretty much the same as the other side, and I have to make both panels for this. Here I'm using some masking tape to make a template for the next repair piece. I lay the masking tape over in several layers to make sure it remains stiff, and then use a pen just to mark out the shape that I need. I can then use the masking tape to put onto a piece of metal and trace around the outside and cut it to shape. With all the welding ground down, I then use the spot welder to put in some spot welds where it meets the sill, and then use the single-sided spot welder to replicate the factory spot welds on the upper part. And on to the next bit of grot. It's no surprise that once I removed the outer box section, it was all rotten behind, so I had to make this piece just like the other side. Right, so that is now all of this tub repaired, although I have just got to weld it to the flange for the sill. I'm going to do that when I repair the outer bit. All of this section is now repaired, and I can now put the strengthener in here. So that's the wheel tub all done. I've kind of rushed through tub and sill and stuff on the video just because you've seen that all before on the other side. Next up is this panel. I think what I'm going to do is just mark out what section I'm going to cut off. I'll then probably remove it, repair the inner, and then lay over my new panel, throw the door on, see what the gap's like, and yeah, see how we go. Okay, so that is now cut away, and I found a bit more brought up here, so it's all wafer thin, bit of a hole here and here. So yeah, got to repair those now. So again, I'm going to use my masking tape trick. I mark it out, cut it to shape, transfer it onto the metal, and then trim the metal to shape. Okay, so as you can see, this is pretty crudely formed. There is a slice here and an overlap. So I'm going to put a slice there on the repair panel and then try and planish this into shape and get it all fitting nicely before I cut it out. Right, so that's that repair finished now. I can think about fitting the door and the outer skin now. Okay, door's back on, gapped up. So now we can look at repairing this section. Okay, so I've now tacked this panel in. I've got it all fitting flush and nice. Thrown the door on just to check that gap again. I know we've got a weld in our little square there. But the door gap's pretty even, a little bit big, so I can address that. But the main thing was to just get that door sitting nice and flush. So yeah, that is now ready to weld in. And then to finish things off, I'm welding down the back edge of the wing so I can then grind it back to set that door gap perfect. Okay, so that is the wing all now repaired and gapped up to the door. Door gaps are looking pretty good. So the next step is this floor. Unfortunately, all of the flange where the floor welds to the tunnel is rotten. So I'm gonna have to repair the tunnel before I can put the floor in. So I've just started grinding the seam in the footwell that welds the floor to the front bulkhead, and the flange is, well, it's like all the other flanges, it's pretty thin. So I'm just going to slice it all out and remake the flange. So here I'm using a block of aluminium and a small bit of bar to form a radius to replicate the front bulkhead. That is the near side done. Just need to do the other side and then we can think about fitting the floor. Well, thanks for checking out the video. Please remember to hit like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow. Come back for the next video where we'll be fitting a floor in the Porsche. See ya!